Hey, I'm Kevin with Godlike. Welcome back to Tone Talk, Episode 7, Part 6. Right. Phil from Monster Magnet on guitar. We're checking out the Maxon Fuzz Element pedals. This is the 6th in the lineup, and for this one, we're going to jump across the pond to England and the famous tones of the legendary Tone Bender. As you know, a lot of great fuzz pedals came out of England. Kind of the fuzz explosion really came out of that country. And what Maxon decided to do with this Fuzz Elements Wind is to emulate the sound of the Mark II Tone Bender. There's a lot of different versions of the Tone Bender. That company also OEM'd them for all different companies. I believe Solar Sound was the company, right? The original company that built them, and they OEM'd them for Vox and other companies, including Marshall. We weren't able to get our hands on a Mark II Vox. So my buddy John at Tech 21 loaned us his Marshall Super Fuzz. And apparently the circuit is practically identical to a Mark II Tone Bender. Slight difference, slightly better bass response or something like that. But generally, yeah, it's there. So what we're going to do is we're going to A-B. We're going to start with the Marshall, and you can hear how these two sound, okay?
Right.
Ready, Phil?
Yep.
Okay, and here is the Maxon. Nice. Okay, so how are you feeling in your tone? Like, what are you? Do you use tone benders a lot?
I use tone benders a lot.
Yeah.
I've got. Well, I think mine's a Mach 1.5. There's so many different versions, and there's the information out there. I really don't know too much about them. All I know is the one I have, I love. I've used it on tons and tons of recording. It's the iconic fuzz pedal for a reason. You know, because I think they're that good. I mean, it's probably, of all the different fuzz pedals I have, it's my most used one and my go-to one for like classic, that era mid to late 60s sound. It's just something about them that are just over the top good. And I think that this is just really giving you a great option to a modern alternative.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you get into these iconic pedals, it's so hard. There's so many different versions. There's different circuits that guys copy, the boutique ones. There's a ton of great ones out there. But at the end of the day, it's what works in your hands and in your pedal board or with what tracks you're doing, you know? So I felt that these two are just really, really similar. And I kind of like what we're going to get into now is the features down here with the switches that gives you that option of having a little bit more in modern situations.
Yeah. So the switches Phil's referring to, there's two small switches on the pedal. One of them is buffer, which adds a buffer in line, which is supposed to smooth out the fuzz a little. So you've got kind of like your vintage, more spitty type of tonality, and then you add the buffer, and it gives you it's basically feeding the circuit with a smoother guitar signal, and this kind of just gives it a little more modern sound.
You know, and then you know, just for the record too, it's like when Beck and Page and those guys were, you know, the Yardbirds were using this kind of stuff. I really doubt those guys were worrying like what value resistor or transistor or what was going on. They plugged that stuff in, they made it work, and it just sounded great. The guys back then were not worrying about the stuff that a lot of us worry about today, which I think is just a big waste of time.
Yeah. So there you go. That's words of wisdom, I think. Yeah, and you know, again, it comes down to the same thing, which is
what do you like?
When I was looking this up, we had a lot of back and forth with Maxon. I'll digress a little bit. Because certain tone benders have the ability to clean up when you roll off your guitar volume. And this Mark II, which was used by Jimmy Page as kind of the claim to fame of the Mark II, doesn't clean up, according to Maxon. And then we had been A-Bing against other tone benders, and then I found out that this the Marshall Super Fuzz is basically a Mark II. And when we plugged them in, we realized that function exactly the same. So it was, that was a little eye-opening for me. But then again, too, there's guys taking these apart on the internet and showing you which, value components have been changed between a Mark II and a Marshall. And again, it comes down to, okay, those are the values that were specified, but are they accurate? Has they drifted? And there's all these variables. So.
And which vintage one do you have? I mean, they all age differently. They all sound different. So you start to get into it's like, a muscle pumping contest of who's actually doing it exactly right. You know what I mean? So what's right is for, what you as a player, what works for you as a player. It doesn't matter. To me, I never concern myself with all like the exact vintage correct, and it's got to be this. Does it sound good? Does it play good?
Yeah.
That's all that really matters in the end.
Yep. Yeah. So there you have it. From the man, touring professional, telling you what's right. And getting back to the pedal, we've got one other switch here, which is called Vintage and Hot. And basically the vintage is just the classic gain structure of the Mark II. And then if you put hot, it just adds just bumps the gain up just a little bit, slightly, gives you a little hotter, more saturated signal. So we're going to do a little A-B between the two, and then I'll stick on the wind at the end, and I'll change the switches a little bit so people can hear the difference, okay? So this time we'll start with wind. Yeah,
it's really good. It's doing that classic spitty thing. These are kind of known for. It just kind of spits out the, spits out the sound.
Really, absolutely. Really cool. Yeah, it seems actually, I think the wind may even be a little bit hotter than the original, and then and then you get a little more level bump when you turn it up to the hot setting on wind. So here we go. Maxon Fuzz Elements Wind, designed to emulate a vintage Vox Tonebender Mark II.
Awesome.
6 out of 7, 1 to go. Stay tuned. I'm Kevin with Godlike. Back in a minute.